the very beginning. So welcome and thank you for attending Horticultural Lighting version 3 draft 2 webinar. It seems like it was quite a long time ago. We've been busy since draft 1, so we're pleased to show you all of the changes that we have in store for you. It's just a little overview first. We're going to take care of some housekeeping with the webinar logistics. Then we're going to give you an overview and the remaining timeline for this version. We'll review the baseline requirements in the proposal, and then we'll move into some specific topics. And as always, we will be saving some time at the end for a Q&A session. First things first, here's your DLC team today. We have Casey Holland. He's the technical manager in charge of Hort V3. Hey there, Casey. We also have Adrienne Martin. She's our technical analyst. Hey there, Adrienne, welcome. And we also have myself, Andrew Tebow. I am the project manager of technical development. And during the Q&A session, we'll also have the support of Leora Radetsky. She is our senior research scientist. So thank you for joining us today, Leora. So everyone knows the slides and the webinar are going to be available on the DLC news and events page after this presentation. And in case you're all screaming at us right now, you are muted. So you can communicate with us through the chat feature if you'd like to say anything there. There we go. Sorry about that, I had a little lag there. The Q&A session will come at the end of this. We'll save 15 minutes for that. And if you have any questions that pop up during the presentation, please don't hesitate to ask them, but please use the question pane, not the chat pane. So if you have a question to ask, make sure that you're using just the right form there. But although we're going to try to answer as many questions as we can today, we do prefer that you use our comment form. And we're going to pop the link to that into the chat so you can download that. But this comment form includes key questions that we're looking for some specific feedback on, and you're encouraged to be as expressive as you'd like. Include anything in these comment forms. All right, so we'll look at what the remaining timeline looks like for version 3. So our goals here, of course, are to accelerate the adoption of energy efficient lighting in the CEA environment. We want to be sure that we're supporting energy efficiency programs to make sure that products are eligible for rebates. And of course, we want to make sure that the QPL is a useful resource for everyone. The ways that we think version 3 is going to specifically achieve these are through an increased efficacy threshold. And we're also introducing some new application-based requirements. We're expanding controllability requirements. New to this draft, we're going to be introducing reporting requirements for LM79 reports, and we'll be discussing our surveillance testing program. And just so everyone knows, draft 2 covers specifically the technical proposals, and fees will be announced at a later date. So we don't have that answer for you quite yet. So here we are, we're in the middle of the draft 2 comment period, and that period ends on September 7th. So please have your comment forms into us by then. We're going to be issuing the final release in November, and we'll begin accepting applications during Q1 of 2023. All right. So, oh, sorry, there you go, Casey. take it
All
away.
right. Thank you, Andrew. Are you hearing me, Mo?
Sure can.
Okay, awesome. You can go ahead and move on to the next slide. So this is a lot of what you're going to see today. Again, is going to be review because we're in the draft 2 review. So we're going to be focusing mostly on changes from draft 1. I am seeing a weird presentation mode right now. Okay, there we go. Yeah, so just to kind of reiterate what you've heard in draft 1, version 3 does build off of our version 2.1 technical requirements, which are currently in effect. I don't know if it's just me, but I'm still seeing a little bit of a visual bug, it seems like, with the slides between presenter and there we go. All right, so just to kind of reiterate, what you might have heard in the draft 1 release webinar or seen in the draft, if you've already taken a look at it, is basically all of the current technical requirements, whether it's at the component level or specific performance criterions or warranty requirements, etc. Those are not changing in draft 2. The only thing that's changing, or that has changed to our current technical requirements from 2.1, as we changed in draft 1, is the efficacy threshold. So version 3, draft 2, still has an efficacy increase proposed in it.
Sorry, Casey, did that fix the presentation mode issue you were seeing?
No, now it's fully in the other mode.
Oh, my apologies there. I'm not sure what it is you're seeing because I'm not seeing it.
Okay. Just at some point, it seems like the presenter or like your mode with notes and stuff is creeping over into the screen. Anyway, keeping the ball rolling. So hopefully all of this is a bit comforting. None of the current technical requirements other than efficacy is proposed to be changed. And so essentially version 3 has new reporting requirements, an efficacy threshold increase, and a lot of the same good stuff being carried over from version 2.1. So we can go ahead and move on to the next slide. Specifically in the efficacy threshold, we are maintaining the proposal that we put out in draft 1, where we proposed looking at the QPL as of April 2022, prior to draft 1 release, the bottom 15% of performance in terms of efficiency. Oh my goodness, this is so strange with the screen that's going on, I'm sorry. So our efficacy increase proposal has been maintained from draft 1 and is still at 2.3 micromoles per joule, which corresponds to the bottom 15% of all listed products in terms of efficacy, and maintains listing besides new requirements outside of efficacy and all the current stuff for the top 85%. So yeah, we can go ahead and move on to the next slide here and get into, again, what's the bulk of the version 3 changes, since most existing technical requirements other than efficacy did not change or are not proposed for a change. So again, just to kind of reiterate, the application information proposed in version 3, draft 1 and draft 2, is really to help take the existing technical requirements and QPL from its kind of one-size-fits-all approach, which leaves out a lot of critical intended product use information, and incorporate reporting requirements for controlled environment and lighting strategy details to help either developing programs around midstream and prescriptive incentives, and also QPL users who are looking at the QPL in order to identify and compare QPL products, unless they're, you know, literally an expert on all of the metrics and criterions and how to evaluate these products. They probably cannot find out which type of applications that they're appropriate for. So this is really going to help out with that, and we're looking forward to your comments on draft 2. So we can go ahead and move on to the next slide. A lot of the details that are in this section in draft 2 have not been changed from draft 1, but there have been some minor changes, one of which is kind of renaming indoor stacked and indoor non-stacked to indoor single tier and indoor multi-tier options. So these still both consider fully enclosed controlled environments with single or multiple layers of canopy in that environment. And greenhouse, as proposed in draft 1, has not changed. Next slide, please. Additional information that has changed, and just to be, just in terms of adding additional clarity into the technical requirements. So lighting scheme was separated into two distinct pieces, one being duration, which relates to the amount of use that the product is going to be intended for, whether that's like a sole source or a supplemental, but definitions around sole source and supplemental have not changed. There have not been any criterion added into say what types of products can or cannot claim these from what we proposed in draft 1. So it's very much the same, just adding in duration here. And similarly on the next slide, partnering with duration is direction in terms of lighting scheme. So this one, again, has not changed from draft 1, just a little bit of clarity in the naming convention here, but still includes top light, intercanopy, and other to include more innovative technologies. And all of these have to be reported. And you can go to the next slide to kind of see what this looks like a little bit nicer here. So in draft 2, you'll still see the same table here, a little bit cleaned up. It's got direction and duration called out specifically on there. Also, some things that have changed in this from draft 1 are that draft 1 had proposed the option to either provide an image of the picture or an image of the product or an active link to the manufacturer's website where the product can be viewed. And either of these would be listed on the QPL. Draft 2 removes the option for the active link to the manufacturer's website and only has the one option for providing a representative image, which will be published on the QPL. Additionally, and consistent with draft 1, draft 2 maintains the proposal that any single product with one model number could claim any combination of these controlled environments, whether it's one combination or all combinations, as long as they align with how you're intending to sell the product. So if you're marketing it only in greenhouses, you would not be able to claim an indoor multi-tier. If you're claiming only vertical farms, you would not be able, if you're marketing it as only vertical farms, you would not be able to claim in your application that it can go in a greenhouse. So we're just making sure that it's consistent. Otherwise, there are no specific technical criterion that define what a product has to be in order to claim one of these applications. And next slide. Again, so kind of on those same points that I was kind of emphasizing over the last few slides, we have a couple key questions on this and are looking for your input. So again, make sure you're following that link that we put in the chat, going to see the technical requirements, taking a deep dive on them, and providing comment on those, especially on the key questions that we have here or any key information as you see fit. So thank you in advance for that. And I will hand it over to Adrienne, who's going to talk about controllability.
Thank you, Casey. So now I will go over the draft 2 updates to the proposed controllability requirements. Next slide, please. So in draft 1 of the technical requirement, the DLC proposed to require that all products be dimmable, and new reported fields were added to collect information on how products are controlled. In draft 2, based on feedback, we removed the proposed dimmability requirements for luminaires with a low PPF. We heard that requiring dimmability for products that may not be appropriate to dim, such as intercanopy lights, may create unnecessary burden and act as a barrier for the adoption of LEDs. Luminaires with a PPF above the proposed threshold, replacement lamps, and DC-powered products are still required to be dimmable under draft 2, as dimmable products have many benefits, including energy savings and support for demand response programs. Also, new reported options were added to some of the reported fields so that the DLC can better capture and characterize the variety of products that exist on the market, and in the future promote interoperability among CEA environments. Next slide. So here is the updated table of controllability requirements. These are now organized into 4 categories: dimming capability, dimming range, dimming and control methods, which encompasses both dimming and control method designations to the product and connector/transmission hardware, and control capabilities. I will go over the updates to each section in the following slides. Next slide. As previously mentioned, the proposed dimmability requirement now only applies to a subset of products. For luminaires with a PPF greater than or equal to 350 micromoles per second, DC-powered products, and replacement lamps, the requirement remains the same as in draft 1. Products must be capable of dimming through line voltage, low voltage, or wireless signal, and dimmability must be indicated on the product spec sheet. And I just want to note that products that are only dimmable via a knob or switch on a fixture and not an external signal will not be accepted. For luminaires with a ppf less than 350 micromoles per second, dimming is optional, and the QPL will display whether the product is dimmable or not. The product spec sheet must also state if the product is dimmable or non-dimmable. DC-powered products and lamps are required to be dimmable because these are often used as modules and combined into a larger light source. For example, a dynamically configurable array of DC-powered products linked together produces a high photon flux, even if an individual DC module has a ppf less than 350 micromoles per second. Next. So I've included this here. So in determining a threshold for this dimmability requirement, there were alternatives that the DLC considered based on the comments we received. This is asked in key questions 1 and 2 at the end of the controllability section of the technical requirements. But I would like to highlight here a few of the alternatives we considered. First is a ppf threshold other than 350 micromoles per second. Next is a wattage threshold. So with our proposed efficacy threshold of 2.3 micromoles per joule, 150 watts is equivalent to 350 micromoles per second at the minimum efficacy. And finally, we received comments suggesting a threshold based on the reported application information that Casey presented on in the previous section. For example, dimming may be required for products reported as sole source but not supplemental. We decided against this type of threshold for draft 2 because of the potential for the dimmability requirement to influence submitter selection of the controlled environment and lighting scheme. But please let us know on your comment form if any of the proposed alternatives or an alternative not listed here is a preferable choice and why. Next slide. The next section is dimming range. Default wattage was added as a reported field so that now the QPL can capture minimum input wattage in ppf as well as default wattage in ppf. We kept these fields in here as they are important for understanding how the products are controlled and supporting interoperability and better CEA practices. The default values are particularly useful for spectrally tunable products, but can also apply to any product where the default ppf is different from the maximum. However, we did remove the requirement that these values must be on the product spec sheet or supplemental documentation. Now they are purely manufacturer reported and will not be checked against any documentation. Next slide. Next, we have dimming and control methods. In draft 1, this was presented as 2 different sections, dimming and control method designations to the product and connector/transmission hardware. But for clarity, in draft 2, we now present these as subsections of the dimming and control methods section, as they are both intended to capture how the product connects and interfaces with other devices. This will not change how they are reported in the applications or on the QPL. In the following slides, I will present the updates to each of the tables associated with these 2 fields. Next. For the wired dimming and control method designations to the product, we have added phase cut and Ethernet reporting options. Now submitters may select phase cut forward phase or reverse phase, power over Ethernet, Ethernet TCP IP, and Ethernet proprietary. Next. For wireless, no new options were added, but we modified the Bluetooth options to better represent the products on the market. Now submitters can select Bluetooth with SIG-mesh and MMDL layers and Bluetooth without. We found that the SIG-mesh and MMDL layers were an important feature in determining interoperability, so we proposed to make this distinction here for draft 2. Next slide. For connector/transmission hardware, we added USB and flying leads as reporting options. Next slide. And finally, the control capability section, previously called control attributes, remains mostly unchanged with slight wording adjustments for clarity. Next slide. There are no major updates to the special considerations for DC powered products and lamps, but for clarity, we edited the wording of this section and added a diagram for reference on DC powered products. We also included language that reiterates that all DC powered products and lamps are required to be dimmable. Next slide. Thanks, everyone. We welcome your feedback on any of the updates presented today. There are 4 key questions for the controllability section of draft 2 that can be found in the policy document and on your comment form. You may submit your responses to these as well as any other comments you may have to comments@designlights.org. Thanks. Now I'll hand it back to Casey.
All right, thank you. So in this section, I am going to be covering some of the additional details which are new in draft 2. But should not be too much of a change for anyone, much more of a process improvement on our end in terms of requiring specific information in submission, especially related to the LM789 test report. So let's go ahead and move on to the next slide here. So you'll see at the bottom of page 40, and we're getting into quite a long technical document now, but at the bottom of page 40, we went ahead and added in a section called Additional Reporting Requirements for LM79 and TM3318. Don't be scared. I know TM3318 is a big hurdle in version 2, but really this is a super small change for version 3 in terms of TM33, in that we're just adding in one value, being essentially the catalog number or the model number of the product being included in the TM33 document. And otherwise, it's the same as previously. The bigger change that's proposed in this section is related to LM79. So if we can look at the next slide now, the changes around LM79 test reports are for any new applications, starting with version 3, or an update application, that would require a new LM79 test report. We would be looking for those LM79 test reports to be to the 2019 version of LM79. And additionally, in this section, there are some additional details around specific information that we would look for in any LM79 test report, including specific electrical characteristics, and whether it's a spectral test or a distribution test, we'd be looking for the PPF and PPID information, and whether it's one of those or both of those, we're looking for the accompanying TM33 document, which has all the details that were previously included in version, or currently included in version 2.1, with the addition of the catalog number being reported. We do require that these test reports be in PDF format, tested at the highest light output. So all the testing requirements are the same. No change in terms of testing, except for that it'd be to LM79 2019 if you're doing a new test on your product and submitting either a new product or an update application that has performance variations which required a new LM79 test report. So test reports that only include, say, wattage on a product, or input voltage, or only a spectral data and not having electrical characteristics will no longer be included. They must be complete or full LM79 test reports as defined in this section of the document. Again, that's starting on page 40. So we can go ahead and look at the next slide now. And unlike the other topics, we don't have any specific key questions on this topic, but we are open to comments. So make sure you take a look at it. Make sure you're thinking through how it may impact you or your stakeholders or your customers, and give us the feedback from your perspective, and we'll make sure that we're incorporating that into our final policy. And thank you in advance for your comments on this topic. And I believe we have one last topic here on surveillance testing. So again, this is the draft 2 of the policy coming from draft 1. So just covering the changes from draft 1, and we can go ahead and move into the next slide. The objective for our surveillance testing program and policy are the same. It's to protect the integrity and value of the Hort QPL for all stakeholders by actively monitoring the validity of data and other information submitted to the Hort QPL. So if you're not familiar with the concept of our surveillance policy or surveillance program, it comes from our SSL program, where we qualify products, and then at some point down the road, we make sure that those products are not just meeting our technical requirements still, but are essentially the same as an originally qualified product. So we have specific criterion in Table 1 and Table 2, which go into those details, and I'll talk about in a couple slides. But before we get there, just want to highlight a lot of the details in the surveillance testing policy are the same. There are some changes in Table 1 and Table 2, but no changes to the proposed process, which is covered in Draft 1 and still detailed in Draft 2. So if you're not familiar with it, make sure you're taking a look at it, but otherwise it generally follows this flow right here, where you list your products to version 3, they can be selected for surveillance testing. The notification goes out to the manufacturers with an invoice and procurement of the product in order to test and evaluate it. And then depending on how the test goes, there's appeals or consequences and relisting if your products fail some of the surveillance testing requirements, but I don't expect any of you guys to do that, right? So let's go ahead and move on to the next slide, where you can see the bulk of the changes that happened in the surveillance testing policy. We're essentially reorganizing and updating some of the values between Table 1 and Table 2 of the policy. So Table 1 for the surveillance testing program essentially is used to make sure the products meet the technical requirements. So we'll be looking at efficacy, power factor, and THD. The thresholds and tolerances for those have not changed, but some of the criterion that were in Table 1 have now moved to Table 2. In Table 2, the intention is to ensure that products list accurate information on the QPL. So if they're testing one product sample and then say 2 years down the road, they get pulled for surveillance testing, it's going to perform within these tolerances that are defined here. And the major change in terms of tolerances is that they were made bidirectional so that it can account for performance variations on kind of either end of the bulk of the product family. And additionally, PPID was proposed to be evaluated in terms of a zonal PPF, where we would look at specific flux quantities within a distribution zone to be consistent with the originally qualified distribution data. And next slide. So the timeline for surveillance testing is the same as we proposed in draft 1. So we're going to start qualifying products to version 3 in Q1 of 2023. And the earliest that we would begin selecting those products for surveillance testing would be in October of 2023. So you may have questions about currently listed products, version 2.1. Those do have until the end of 2023 to be updated to version 3, but that does not mean that they will not be picked after October and once they're listed version 3. So don't just don't delay your update applications because you think it'll avoid surveillance testing, because they won't. And thank you in advance for getting update applications in before the deadline. All right, and we can go ahead and move on to the next slide here, which includes the key questions that we do have on the surveillance testing policy and how it's specific to the Hort program and details within that. So make sure you take a look at these questions, this policy, and know how it's going to affect you and your products or your customers' products and your business, and let us know what you think about that. And otherwise, I think we've kind of saved a lot of bit of time here, and I'll hand it back over to Andrew to do the recap and lead us into Q&A.
Thank you, Casey. Great job. So my computer will listen to me. Just to review here, the major updates here are the increased efficacy threshold, the introduction of the intended product use requirements, some expanded controllability requirements at the product level, the new reporting requirements for LM79 and TM33, and the surveillance testing program. So now I think we've got plenty of time to move on to some Q&A. So let's see here. Just to reiterate for anyone wondering that the slides and the webinar will be posted on the news and events page on DLC website. So we will be posting that shortly after this is over. We've got a question here that is someone wondering if they can use different word for tiers. Sometimes growers are working with state policies that use the word tier, like in Massachusetts, Tier 1 cannabis producers are 10,000 square foot or more. Tier 2 cannabis producers are 5,000 to 10,000 square feet. Tier 3 is less than 5,000, etc. This person's wondering if maybe DLC could use the word multi-level instead. Make note that it might be a non-issue, but that it might cause some confusions. So I think, Casey, would you mind taking that?
Yeah, absolutely. So great question, and thank you in advance for the comment. I totally agree. I don't think there's any specific industry standards around what this is or should be called, so it's definitely flexible. And if you can submit that comment with, say, references to where the other, like where tiers are currently used and how it may be, a problem in those areas, we'll appropriately consider that. And and try to find some better nomenclature if that's not ideal, for the bulk of our stakeholders.
Great, thank you very much, Casey. Just some more general information while we wait for some more questions to come in. If people are wondering about the change in fees, we haven't announced that yet, and that will come later with the release of the final document. And on that same note, fees for the surveillance testing program will also be released later. So it's not beginning until October of 2023. So before then, we will be announcing those fees, but we don't have that information for you right now. So we do welcome any and all comments. So please don't forget that we have a comment form that's available for download on our website. We have that link in the chat right now. And we're especially interested in your feedback to the key questions. So each of these sections is going to have a few key questions to it, and we'd really appreciate your feedback there. Someone is wondering if version 3 products can be submitted now. So currently, you can submit eligible products under version 2.1, but version 3 won't be accepted until Q1 2023 at the earliest. Let's see.
I see a question around the LM79 and the only change of the model number. So just to clarify, the model number was a change to the TM33 reporting requirements, which accompanied the LM79 test report. The biggest change to the LM79 test report is that we would be requiring for all new and performance affecting update applications that require a new test report to be tested to 2019 version of LM79. So I think the biggest hurdle on that is making sure that you're working with the test lab that is testing to the 2019 version of LM79 in order to get that test report that's going to be able to meet our requirements. The prior version to 2019 was 2008, just quite a while ago.
Thank you. We have a question on the controllability section. So Adrian, if you could take this one, please. So regarding the minimum dimmability and PPF, someone is wondering, does this have to be measured at a lab or can it be self-reported?
Yes, thank you for that question. The answer is no, it doesn't have to be measured at a lab. It's completely self-reported and not like measured against any of the submitted documentation. It's just a value that submitters enter.
Thank you. One more question. I think this is a good one for you, Casey. Someone's wondering where they can find the meaning of the acronyms that we went over in the slides.
Yes. So that's a good reminder for myself. I should probably try to use less acronyms or make sure I have the full spelling of it out there. But the acronyms, yeah, so the acronyms are, you can find them if you read the technical requirements, they're included in there. We also have a resource, a technical resource that's on our website, which helps relate these terms to the human-based term. If you're more familiar with those and trying to get up to speed in the industry. So it'll basically have a relationship between something like photosynthetic photon efficacy and lumens per watt or luminous efficacy and those types of terms. But all of the acronyms are tied to their term in the technical requirements also, which come from the ASABE industry standard definitions.
Thank you, Casey. Looks like we have someone else wondering, what are the options for products that are currently listed to the QPL but do not meet the new efficacy threshold?
Yeah, so products that don't meet the new efficacy threshold will have to update or they will be delisted. So depending on where performance can be improved in your product most easily, or it's a bit of a business decision, what to do with your products, but if they do not meet the new efficacy threshold, they will be delisted, and they would need to be assuming some type of component changes to meet that new efficacy threshold.
Great. And speaking of delisting, when version 3 goes live, is that going to be when 2.1 products will be delisted?
No. So we plan on accepting applications starting in Q1 of 2023, and version 2.1 listed products will have until the end of 2023 to update. So basically 12 months after the final policy is turned into an application process and we start accepting applications, we'll be able to have basically 12 months for 2.1 listed product to update.
Great, thank you very much. So in version 3, we'll have product pictures. So what was the reasoning behind that decision?
The reasoning behind that decision is the QPL is being looked at, and we're trying to incorporate additional information to help QPL users, whether they're an end user who has very little information or a developing energy efficiency program looking at the QPL to make sure that the product is the one that they're looking at for the project or is appropriate for the application that they're considering, especially knowing that some programs are further along than others or more strenuous than others in terms of looking at, say, product dimensions and how it fits into a space and how that interacts with, shading in a greenhouse and stuff like that. Or, it also helps the end user who's looking at the QPL and seeing a product claiming a specific application and knowing, all right, I'm looking at 2 products who say they're really good at this application, but I like how this one looks better. So that's a little bit of a benefit.
Great, thank you. Just to go over one clarification. So is it possible for submitters to design and market a product for one application and report another application on the QPL?
No. So as I was trying to say whenever I was covering that topic, if, say, you're designing a product that is specifically an intra-canopy light and you're marketing as specifically an intra-canopy light, you would not be able to claim another application in your DLC application. So however you are designing and marketing your product is how you should be submitting it to the QPL.
Makes sense. And someone actually had trouble hearing us a couple of questions ago. So the question about the technical resource document that you mentioned, what was the name of that document and where did, what document did you say it was related to, that it came from? That's the question.
Oh.
So I think it must have been a question about acronyms potentially.
Yeah, I think so. So I was referencing outside of DLC is the ASAP S640 standard, which is like definitions and nomenclature for agriculture or greenhouse, controlled environment, lighting, and such. So that's where you'll find all of the industry standards and terms that we rely on for developing our technical requirements. But if you're specifically looking for the document that relates the acronyms that you saw today to the words that they describe, you can look at the technical requirements for the DLC, which is version 2.1 technical requirements, or the version 3 draft, which has the same information in it.
Thank you very much for clarifying that. Let us know if you still have some questions there. We have someone wondering how the DLC typically arrives to the proposed efficacy of 2.3 micromoles.
Yeah, good question. So this strategy came from the development of our version 1 technical requirements, where we proposed a major revision cycle of every 2 years to propose an efficacy increase that would relate to delisting the bottom 15% of all QPL listed products in terms of efficacy. So in April, right before draft 1 release, I pulled a QPL, and that was the graphic that I was showing quite a few slides ago, that had the distribution of all QPL listed products at that time. I looked at where the bottom 15% line was at, and that essentially was 2.3 micromoles per joule, and that is how we got to this proposal.
All right, very good. So in terms of what happens when version 3 goes live, are the products that are currently listed going to be automatically updated?
No. So the reason behind that is because version 3 requires a lot of new reported information, specifically around application or intended product use and controllability. So all of the details that we were covering today, however that ends up looking in the final policy, whether it's slightly revised or the same as what you saw today, there's a lot new reported information that's going to be required for all listed products. So essentially, no listed product will be able to automatically update, even if you meet the new efficacy threshold, just because there are additional reported information requirements.
Great. So I'm not seeing any new questions come in, but let me know if I'm getting a lag on my end, anyone. So we'll give people maybe just another minute to put in any question. Maybe while we're giving people a chance to think of any questions they have, Casey, would you mind going over the definition of what supplemental material means?
Yeah, so supplemental material is basically something other than your spec sheet that has your marketing information or manufacturer specific external facing documents, which have the information that we're looking for in it that may not be on the spec sheet. So something
Great.
from the manufacturer that's external facing and describes the product.
So someone is wondering, will new requirements be sent to existing DLC listing vendors?
Yes, I believe that that's how it's done. Once the final policy is finalized, which is currently planning for November of this year, we should be doing like a bulk email to our stakeholders, especially those that are subscribed to our horticulture lighting information. So if you're not, make sure you go to the website and subscribe for our emails, and you're on our e-blast list, and you would definitely get it. Otherwise, there will be specific outreach through the application process related to, prompting you to update your listed products before they're delisted. But the technical requirements can also be found on our website. Currently, as we've covered today, we're in the draft 2 part of that. So I recommend you take a look at it today and think through how it's going to affect you, give comments on it, and that way, whenever we get to the final policy in November, you're ready to kind of hit the ground running once ever we start accepting applications in Q1.
Great, thank you very much, Casey. So I think we're running pretty dry on questions right now. So unless anyone wants to stop me, I will move into wrapping things up here. So just to go over the main points here. So we're currently inside the 6-week comment period for draft 2. The comments are due on September 7th. So please be sure to download, fill out that form before then, return it to comments@designlights.org. After that, we're going to digest the comments and incorporate as appropriate into the final proposal, and that those final requirements will be delivered in November of this year and will not be effective until Q1 of next year. And we will be announcing a more specific date for that effective date at some point. So that is all we had for you today. Thank you very much for joining. I'll just check to make sure no burning questions came through. Oh, I do see a few more. So Casey, if you do want to stick around, we could have you answer some more. So someone currently has products listed under 2.1. There won't be any changes to the product, and they are above the 2.3 micromoles. So what does the version 3 application look like? Because the TM33 will not contain the part number of the luminaire, for example.
Yeah, so since the TM33 requirement essentially comes from the LM79 test report, and if you're already having a product that's above the efficacy threshold for 2.3, you would not need to retest. So no new TM33 would be needed, but you would need to resubmit, and there will be additional information in the application specific to the application or intended product use information that we described today that relates to controlled environment and lighting scheme, and the additional controllability at the luminaire level information that Adrienne covered in her topic.
All right. We have someone wondering if we can reiterate the reason for supplemental lighting being included in the required dimmability function and its reporting. And maybe that's a good one for Adrienne to take.
Okay. So if I think I understand this question correctly, it might be asking why, like, if supplemental lighting is above the 350 watt or ppf threshold, then like that would be included. So we decided not to draw the line based on application information, like supplemental versus sole source, because of the potential for this dimmability threshold to influence people's reported decision on the application information. So for example, if like you had a non-dimmable product, you might, like, that might influence somebody's selection of the application information. So that's why we decided on a ppf threshold rather than that. But we are still open to comments on those, and I'd love to follow up and sort of clarify that. There was also another controllability question in here that I would really love to answer.
Oh, sure, the one about the radio waves?
Yeah, so it's will it be possible to list wireless control that does not employ radio waves, specifically infrared remote control? So the other wireless section of the wireless section of the requirements is intended to cover any control method that that isn't listed anywhere else on that list. So this isn't exclusive to radio waves. I am not personally familiar with infrared remote control, but I will definitely be looking into it. But as long as it's a method of control that can, meets our requirements, then yes, the wireless section can cover that. The other wireless section can cover that.
Awesome, thank you, Adrienne. New question, will the DLC provide to the manufacturers a list of products they will not qualify? Maybe that's a good one for you to answer, Casey.
Yeah, so specific communication details are still being figured out, but we do intend to notify everyone, that they're going to have to update their listings, otherwise they'll be delisted, because version 3 is affecting everyone, every product on the QPL. Not just those that are below the efficacy threshold, but special communication, probably should be made to let people know if they're below the efficacy threshold also, and it's not just reported information that they need to supply, but that they need to make some product changes to meet the new threshold. But hopefully manufacturers are also aware of how their products perform and how they relate to the technical requirements, and can plan ahead a little bit also, and not just rely on communication.
Thank you, that makes sense. And we have someone wondering if there's a way for the DLC to publish an example of a full application that meets all of the version 3 requirements. That would be a good one for you to answer, I think, Casey.
Sorry, the question was, can we basically show like a demo family?
Yeah. The exact wording of the question is there a way for DLC to publish an example of full application that meets all of version 3 requirements?
Yeah, that's a good suggestion. That's something we can definitely consider.
All right, and in terms of images, will PNG images be accepted for the PPID and SQD?
Yeah, so actually with version 3, our intention is to start just using the pre-submission tool that's publicly available right now. So if you're submitting applications, you can go into your MyDLC portal, and on the left-hand side, you'll see a horticulture pre-submission tool where you can basically upload your TM33 document, and it'll give you the SQD and PPID images in the right format with the right details, and it'll help your process or your application process also by giving you input on your TM33 document prior to submission. So you'll know based on our tool whether we see anything missing or something that needs to be addressed in your TM33 document. You'll be able to take that back and get your information squared away, along with being able to submit more standardized SQD and PPID images with your application.
Thank you. New question, why do greenhouses not have multi-tier lighting?
Yeah, it's a good question. Generally not as popular, not based on what I've seen, at least on the QPL data around intended use that has been submitted, but definitely can be included if appropriate. So if you see that as not specifically indoor, but should also be greenhouse, then we can have a conversation and make sure it's properly or appropriately included into the final policy.
All right. And after the delisting, will the QPL show delisted products and when they were delisted? And as a follow-up, will there be a list of products that applied but did not meet the QPL requirements?
No, I don't think there will be a list of products that have applied and do not meet the QPL requirements, but there is definitely a list or a filter that you can do on the QPL, where if you go in to the horticulture QPL today, there on the left-hand side, I think it's right toward the top of the filters that says status or listing status or something like that. And you can currently, you can already see products that have been delisted if you filter to that. And if a product is delisted because of version 3, you will be able to see it using that filter if it was previously qualified. If it was never on the QPL, we won't show anything related to it.
That makes sense. All right. So I don't see any more questions on my end, but so if anyone else has anything different, let me know. Apparently I've been having some internet problems today. There's some lag here. So does anyone else see any questions that have come in that I might not be able to see? All right, we got one more coming through the pipe. Oh, here it is. Question, will there be water-cooled LED fixtures included in the QPL? That's one for you, Casey.
Yeah, there already are actually. So version 2.1, which is currently effective, essentially laid the ground for eligibility for externally supplied actively cooled products or liquid cooled products, or however you want to call those. But yeah, so they're already eligible. Version 2.1 details those technical requirements, and version 3 basically adds on to those. So everything that we propose today for version 3 is essentially applicable to all products, independent of whether it's actively cooled or has a fan or is DC powered or is a lamp. So yeah, hopefully that helps.
I think it should. Thank you. So I believe that was the true last question that we had. Sorry about those hiccups there, everyone, but I'm glad we had plenty of time for the Q&A because there's a lot of questions today. So please don't hesitate to give us your feedback. Don't forget, comments are due September 7th, and thank you so much for joining the webinar today. Do you have anything else to add, Casey or Adrian?
Thank you all. Just looking forward to your comments.
Great. Thanks, everyone. Take care.